Hi, I'm Andy Choi with the Verizon Business Team. I want to welcome all of you to our small business webinar series. These webinars, of course, are designed to give you some insight from professionals, to give you ideas all about navigating these fast-moving times, all to make sure your small businesses continue to succeed. Now, this week, we are talking about small business funding, and even more exciting, we're taking your questions about it live through Q&A. We are hosting today, we're bringing back the very insightful Ms. Julie Hyman. Julie, of course, has covered financial markets for 20 years now. She's an anchor at Yahoo Finance, and she hosts On the Move alongside Adam Shapiro. Our expert today, we are excited to have Ms. Kedma O. Kedma is an expert on business funding and the author of Target Funding, and just the right time now to hear all about her ideas on financing. So, without further ado, let's send it over to Julie and Kedma.
Thanks, Andy. And I want to bring Kedma in now. I'm Julie. That's Kedma. Kedma, talk to us first of all, what is Target Funding and how did you get into this?
That's a great question. So Target Funding, in the simplest terms, is really about identifying and investigating specific funds and resources that are for your particular situation. So very similar to target marketing, where we identify specific customers, I do that actually in the form of funding. So it's very much tied into your business and where you're at. And actually, my story began because of my own journey. So back in 2001, I had to leave a very difficult relationship. I was living in Arizona, and I had to file bankruptcy. And I remember the moment as if it was yesterday. I was sitting on a corner. I had just filed bankruptcy, and I was sobbing my eyes out, and I was thinking, what do I do next? Because, you know, I was a pretty educated woman, but I was in circumstances that were beyond my control. And 2 weeks later, I received an envelope from actually a credit card company, Capital One, for $200. And I remember the moment that changed my life forever. And as I looked at the letter and said, you've just received $200, I remembered as a little girl that I used to play a game called Monopoly. And one of the things about Monopoly, if you've ever played, is when you go around the board, no matter what's going on, you pass go, you collect $200. So I gamified it and I said, well, what if I go on a journey to uncover every grant and every resource, every funding opportunity for someone like me? And that was a 15-year journey where I helped thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs gamify how to find money. And then in 2019, I received a book deal with McGraw-Hill, and I'm here today really to serve people and teach them how to find money.
So what's interesting also as a woman, right, is that, you know, someone like me who I cover venture capital, the markets, et cetera, and we know from all the data out there that a lot of the money flows to men, flows to majority men, you know, non-men of color, for example. So how do you look for those places where you can get the funding that is meant for you?
That's a great question. So what I want to do is step back, because to your point, it can be really overwhelming. The first thing I want you to imagine is I view finding money as if we're about to eat a pizza pie. Now, I know that sounds strange, but the way I see a pizza pie is if you're going to order a pizza pie, you're not going to eat the whole pie for yourself. You're going to cut it in slices. And I see Target Funding as not one pie, but 12 slices that allows us to actually target where to find the money. Now, before we start going into where do I find it if I'm a woman entrepreneur, we have to understand how to play the game, because in the field, whether you're a venture capitalist or angel investor or trying to find grants, if you can't figure out how to play the game, you're not going to find the money. That's a guarantee. So I view finding money as if I was playing a chess game. And if you've ever played chess, the reality is that you have to know every single piece, what they do, and you have to figure out the board first. So that's the first thing I will do, is I will understand that, in this example, woman entrepreneur, and figure out what do they need. So in answering that, I have to understand their variables. The biggest teaching I can offer you is if we can isolate variables, then we can find funding. So I have to delve into what is a variable. So you mentioned woman entrepreneur. So here's my question. Where is this woman entrepreneur based? Let's do an example. Are they based in LA or are they based in New York City?
Let's say Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, perfect. We're going to play with Los Angeles. So we have now a woman entrepreneur based in Los Angeles, and you're going to work with me to build the variables. Tell me what kind of business she's working on.
Let's see. Maybe she's doing a digital marketing business.
Love it. Digital marketing business. And how long has she been in business?
18 months.
18 months. Okay. And what does she need the money for?
She needs the money to, let's see, maybe find, I don't know, find clients,
Okay.
client discovery.
Okay, so maybe for client discovery, maybe for marketing, okay? And does this woman entrepreneur have any specific ethnicity? Is she also considered or classified as a minority? Or is she just considered a Caucasian woman business?
Let's say Caucasian woman business.
Okay,
for purposes.
perfect. And has she served in the military?
Sure.
Okay, perfect. I have just built 5 or 6 variables that I'm going to now use to actually target that woman-owned business. Because if you understand how the game plays, there isn't one source. There's actually 12 sources. So we're going to take that example. First, I'm going to look at actual funding in LA. That's geographic funding. So I'm going to look at LA, and then I'm going to look in California. I'm not going to necessarily target it as a woman. I just want to look at funding in LA and California for small businesses, 500 employees or less. Then I'm going to look at women funding, but not necessarily just in LA. I'm going to look at women funding nationally, then I'll bring it into the state, and then I'll bring it into the city. From there, I'm going to look at the veteran piece, because there's an entire variable just for veterans. I can show you veteran funding for grants. I can show you veteran funding for crowdfunding. I can show you veteran funding for interest-free loans. So then I'm going to target the veteran piece. However, I didn't even ask if she had a social mission behind it. So assuming she has a social mission, I may go and tap into that mission and then go after funding. Perhaps maybe her mission is she's doing digital marketing with the goal to help young women aspire to be business women. Guess where I'm going to tap into? Nonprofit organizations that are focused on young women to aspire them to be business. And then I'm going to tap that in. And finally, I'm going to tap into what she needs it for. Because money is tied to use of funds, I'm going to tap into what kind of availability is in the community that can give her that marketing. Once I do all that, she gets a customized target funding plan, and all she has to do is execute on it.
So if she gets all of that plan of where to look for the money, I guess the next question is, and I was not very prepared as your sample person, what do I need to present? What information do I need? How do I present it? I mean, where do I begin?
Right. A lot of times when people think about grants, they think about 501c3s, nonprofit organizations. Because the truth is that most grants are distributed by the government down to nonprofit organizations. And those type of grants that we apply for or prepare are enormous. I mean, sometimes to put a grant together, you're talking 30 or 40 pages. You have to have all these grant writers. It's actually not the case in the for-profit realm. In the for-profit realm, it may be a 2-page document. Here's the problem, though. You have 48 hours to find the money and apply. Time is against you. That's the problem. Because I tell every single client I meet, they say, there is no money out there. And I said, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to prove there's millions out there. Every single day there's a funding party. But you're not invited. Because you don't even know there's a party. So you can't come. So how do you prepare for the party? You do the things on the back end that allow you to do that quick results. You have your right slide deck, your right business plan. You have your right team. You have your sales sheet. You have maybe your customer testimonials. It's not necessary to have a great credit score. I got a lot of funding and did have a great credit score, so we'll talk about that. But the most important thing, if we're going truly for grants, you have to tell me your wow. In a field of 100 women who have amazing stories, why are you special? That's the crux of it. And if you can enter into my heart as the grant writer on the other end, or grant receiver on the other end, and capture me, I'm going to want to fund you. So an example of where no credit score is, because I had done my homework, in 2008, I had the privilege of having an opportunity to get my own commercial office. Very hard for women entrepreneurs. You have to put about 20% down. You have to collateralize everything and your children. You have to have the most amazing credit score. And actually, frankly, most women who don't get funded it has nothing to do with their cash flow. The reason they're not getting funded, they don't have enough collateral. That is a reality. I worked with senators in my state. Number one reason women cannot get funded is not a cash flow issue, it's a collateral issue. So here I am in this predicament, and I get an opportunity for applying to purchase my own condo, 2,000 square foot condo, valued at $600,000. And I said, I can't apply. I filed bankruptcy. I don't have the credit. Here's where my mistake was. They said, well, whoa, Kedma, I haven't told you what the variables are. I said, oh, okay. What are the variables? Number one, you have to be in business 3 or more years. I had that. You have to have been cash flowing positive for 3 years. I had that. You have to be based in Portland. I had that. You had to be a woman, minority, or an immigrant. I had that. And the most important piece, you had to be doing something in the community that showed you had a social mission. Because I had all of those variables, I got into the program, 6% down, and my interest for the last decade has been fixed at 0.04%. Okay, I want to make it clear for the audience, not 4%, 0.04%. That is a grant. The subsidy was received from new market tax credits, along with Prosper Portland, and money from the government to level the playing field for women. So when you ask me that question, what do you need to prepare? You need to prepare your game because when the money comes, it's game on and you have to apply quickly.
And it seems like you also have some, not only do you have to get in there and apply, but obviously they're only giving so much money to so many people at the end of the day. So you have some sort of rules and guidelines to how you not only find it, but then actually get it.
Exactly. Yes, because there is no free money. You have to do the work. Do you know how many times people are like, I want to work with you? Why? Because I know where to find the money, right? It's not free. There's work and time and process and strategy. However, if you follow the formula, you will always win. So number one thing you have to do is you first have to identify all your variables. And the variables could be more than you imagine. Right now, we're in a very sensitive time in the world where everybody is talking about PPP, EIDL, anything with disaster loan relief, SBA. But in my world, that's one circle. It's called disaster relief funds. That just taps into one circle. It doesn't tap into innovation circle, where I can get you money for research and development on product development process. Doesn't tap into economic development funding or crowdfunding. It doesn't tap into 12 other ideas. So first thing you want to do, decide what your variables are. Then you have to research the companies, because if you try to apply for something and your mission is not congruent with their mission, I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to get the money. You didn't target them. Whose fault is it? Your fault. It's not their fault. People say to me all the time, well, I'm a male Caucasian business entrepreneur and there's no money for me. Yes, there's money for you, but you have to target in a different way. Maybe we're targeting based on your industry cluster, digital marketing. Maybe your digital marketing is going to support cybersecurity. Well, it's not digital marketing I'm going to target. I'm going to target the money coming down the government for cybersecurity, and you're using that solution. The other things you want to do is you want to make sure that when you apply and you get rejected, that you know why. Because in getting rejected, it's a golden nugget. Oh my gosh, I got rejected. Thank you for actually knowing I submitted. What a gift. And now I can see how to fix it. So the bottom line is it is a funding calendar that you have to follow and process every single month to actually win the game.
One of the other things I love that I'm seeing in multiple pieces of your advice is you have to actually spend the money. When you get the money, I mean, because sometimes you want to have that, I guess, for a cushion, right? But if you're applying for a grant, presumably whoever's giving you that money, whether it be a grant or a loan or whatever it is, they want you to use it.
Absolutely. Not only do they want you to use it, but you have to use it wisely. Here's what I tell all of my clients, because I've served over 10,000 entrepreneurs. That's a lot. It doesn't mean I know everything, but I know enough. The quickest way for you to guarantee going to jail is screwing up a grant and spending it wrong. Because if you spend the money irresponsibly and it's government tied, guaranteed you'll be calling me from jail. You have to make sure if you receive the funds, you're very prudent. And what I mean by that is you will receive often, especially for grants, the criteria by which you're going to spend it. And a lot of times you don't get to spend it. It's a lockbox. They actually tell you, here we are actually giving you $50,000. What would you like to spend it on? We're going to send it to your service provider. We'll write a check there. Because look, I have been in other predicaments that are questionable. I'm actually a co-author for a Native American entrepreneurship program, and I used to do a lot of training in Indian country. True story, really quickly. There was a case where a Native American tribe actually provided a grant to a Native American business owner for $100,000. $100,000 grant, non-dilutive funds. Here's the money. We've seen your plan. We're going to give it to you. In the plan, the entrepreneur had indicated they needed a vehicle for their business. That's not unreasonable. A lot of times, depending on the type of business, a vehicle is necessary to actually conduct the business operation. When the audit came through, the entrepreneur, I'm telling you right now, you're not going to believe this, purchased a Ferrari. Okay? I can't make this stuff up. I can't make this stuff up. The auditor came back and said, why did you purchase a Ferrari with the grant? The entrepreneur said, I told you I needed a vehicle, and I bought one. Now, who's right? Is it the entrepreneur that bought the vehicle, or is it the auditor? Look, code of ethics have to be in place, and I would side with the auditor that this was irresponsible funds being used. And, yes, the client bought a vehicle, but you didn't need a vehicle like a Ferrari to execute on that. My point being, if you're going to go after this money, you have to be prudent to spend it correctly.
So what else do people need to know?
What else should people need to know? It's so much fun when a client calls me up and says they got it. When I did my book with McGraw-Hill, I went back and forth, and I love McGraw-Hill. And I said, I want a guarantee on my book. They're like, we can't do a guarantee. I said, but I can guarantee it if they follow the formula. So what I want them to know is no matter where you are in despair, no matter what your struggle is, if you're a single mom and you're listening to this and you're saying to yourself, Kedma, I'm not where you are. There's no way I can do it. I'm going to tell you can. Because I've been in the lowest moments. If you knew my backstory, which I'll just quickly say, I was in hiding for 5 years. I grew up in a very difficult environment, and I went into hiding for 5 years from the age of 18. And I had to fight my way every step of the way. And I tell my clients that if you have absolutely nothing like I did and can still make it and still find a way, then your situation, I can make that happen and you can make it happen. But you have to follow the roadmap. You have to follow the variables. And just like I did that exercise with you in LA and digital marketing, the key to the money is inside you. Identifying first the variables, then going after that. And if you get my book or not get my book, regardless, I curated over 300 resources just in the book alone, so that you don't have to feel like, where do I go next? So I think the biggest thing I want to make sure people know is that I have proven this over and over again. And my joy, why I do what I do, to be honest, is when someone sends me an email and said, oh my God, I just got $5,000. What do I do now? And that is like, that's my karma. That's my gift that it just gives me so much love.
So Kedma, just to sort of summarize and bring it all together there, then when you're looking at what to do and sort of how to begin this, you look at what are the various variables of your business.
Correct.
What makes you unique? Where could it be? Correct. And then you have some resources as well for people to look to sort of make a beginning of where to start your search.
Absolutely. Then you identify the funds, and then from there you go and think about funding in a unique way. If we say the word grant, I can throw out so many terms you'd have no idea, because a grant could be an IDA, it could be an SBIR, it could be a match savings grant. So you have to first understand what you want to look for. And in the example I gave you on the building, you wouldn't have thought it was a grant until I actually walked you through and said, oh my God, Kedma, that's an incredible grant you received. And the reason you wouldn't have known that is they didn't show up and say, we're going to give a grant in the equivalent of $100,000 by reducing the interest from 6% to 0.04%. It didn't happen that way. So the first thing I would say to not overwhelm people is get your variables in place, decide what you want to spend the money for, target the organizations, and from there, you're going to start to create a roadmap of what you need to help your business grow.
And I'm seeing you've listed some resources, SBIR.gov, USPTO. How do you know which of the, kind of what the differences are and which one makes sense for you?
Well, here's where you have to do your homework. I'm going to ask you to research, because I believe most entrepreneurs want the microwave life. They want to come to me and I would take their life and put it in the microwave for 2 minutes and out is going to be a beautiful life. I want you to actually do the research. I know those acronyms, and so you researching it will allow you to delve in a little. It may take you an hour, but SBIR is for research and development. However, for digital marketing, I may pivot you. SBIR, for example, is funds that come from the federal government, $2.2 billion every year, non-dilutive funds. They don't take an IP position, intellectual property position. And a lot of times it's for things you wouldn't even imagine. So in the example we did, if you had done digital marketing and awareness to help women entrepreneurs at a youth go to the next level, and as a result of that, it shifts more women into STEM, I may tell you to look at SBIR and get a feasibility opportunity for $100,000, which is a $100,000 grant, to actually test if it's feasible. But I don't want to go into all of that until you do a little bit of homework. So I'm going to ask you to do an adventure for yourself. Take an adventure. You're probably sitting at home pulling your hair out anyway, if you have any. Take an adventure and go through my links, and then we can talk about next steps and what direction to go.
Gotcha. All right, Kedma, we've covered a lot of ground here. I'm sure people have a lot of questions, so we want to turn it over to the people who are watching. Everyone, you can type your question. There's a tab for questions in the webinar, and then we're going to take them and see what Kedma has to say. All right, so we're ready to take those questions. A lot of you have submitted them already. I do want to mention that some of you have submitted questions about the PPP or the EIDL loans being offered by the government. Today, we're really focusing on alternative sources of funding with Kedma. If you want, you can also view the past webinars we've done, which did focus more on those other types of grants and loans. And so you can view them on Bright Talk or on Verizon's business page as well. And by the way, some of you have asked about the slides as well that Kedma offered there. You can view those in one of the tabs as well. So, and that will be visible after this presentation, as will the whole presentation for that matter. So, Kedma, I find it funny because you were just talking about the microwave life, right? People just want to pop it in and be ready. And a few people have written in to say, does Kedma offer consulting services? Can she come in and tell me what to do in this situation? The message that I got was that you want folks to go in and do the legwork so that they really understand the process themselves?
I think both ways. Yeah, absolutely. There is a vehicle for me to support consulting and training, but there's nothing more powerful than teaching people what to do. So it's kind of like bookkeeping. At least if you understand how QuickBooks works and then you outsource for reconciliation, you at least know how the money is being used. So I think it's a combination of both. My whole purpose of doing this is education. That's what I believe in. And if I can teach people and educate them, they're going to become better business owners. And that's really my first and foremost focus.
So looking through some of the questions that we've been getting here, there are several people who are asking about cash flow and sort of what you discussed in the traditional funding mechanisms. They want you to have collateral. They want you perhaps to have historical cash flow. One person writes in to say, I've tried to find funding to open or purchase an existing business, but I'm constantly being told that I need some historical cash flow, which I don't have, even though I have projected cash flow. So what are my options, this person asks?
Yeah, so purchasing an existing business is going to be tough. We have to think about that. We have to think about what is the value of that business? What is your experience? First thing I would want to understand is, can you actually negotiate the loan with the actual purchaser? Most people don't think about that, but a lot of times when people are trying to sell their business, you can just do an out of bank relationship and work directly with the company to purchase it. The second thing I'm going to want to understand is, are they just purchasing an existing business, or are they looking at franchising? I am a huge proponent of franchising because I managed, prior to my new role, I managed our national franchising education initiative for the small business development centers. And I would strongly suggest you look at FranFit, which is what I actually developed prior to leaving. And we work very closely with an organization called FranNet that helps to make people aware. The reason I bring this up is one of the other programs, the International Franchise Association, has a whole focus on VetFran. So I don't know enough about this person, but I know that there are funding set aside for veterans and franchising. So I have to really know a little bit more. But what I can tell you is that it's never just an end game. If a bank says no, we just have to look at it differently.
Similar question here. We've gotten a couple questions about collateral. I own a social media marketing company, someone says, and have little to no collateral. I found this to be the biggest hurdle in securing funding. Advice?
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Then I'm going to ask what kind of funding you're trying to secure. If you're trying to do traditional lending, working with banks, and for anybody who's a banker, I love you, I respect you, but you are just a certain funding part, right? You're not all of it. Then I would maybe look elsewhere. It depends on the size of the loan, but not all funders require a sizable collateral. I would first want them to step back and see what's happening in their community and maybe go after economic development agencies. One of the things that's really important for me when I am consulting with someone is to understand in their community who are the economic arms that support small businesses, because their mission is different. A lender's mission may be, we need to get that collateral because we have to make our shareholders happy. An organization like Business Oregon, for example, where I'm based, their mission is to create jobs. And in creating jobs, they may be a little bit more lax in the type of collateral they're needing. And so I think we just need to step back and really understand, where are they looking for funds? Because there's a lot of sources we can look at that don't require a lot of collateral.
There are also several people who are wondering how long this process tends to take, although I imagine it varies.
Yeah. It's very different than the nonprofit world, because I've worked in the nonprofit world. In the nonprofit world, it could take a while. In the for-profit world, you're actually working against time. If you look at COVID relief and all the funds, it is scary how much money people were entitled to that actually did not even get a chance to apply, because the turnaround time for COVID relief and grants was about 3 to 4 day turnaround. So if I look at Prosper Portland, they came out with up to a $10,000 grant, and they gave us a 72-hour turnaround. If you fell asleep watching Netflix and then you woke up and you didn't bother looking at your internet for 2 days, you wouldn't have even applied. So first you have to be very vigilant and focused on how much time you have, which is why you want to do the work, on the back end. And second of all, it really does not take a lot of time. Most of these applications are pretty short, 2 pages or 4 pages, because they want the money to be spent and they want to be able to create opportunity for entrepreneurs.
So here's, I think, a wrinkle that's pretty specific to what's happening right now, to what you're saying. Let's see, where was this question? My family owns a carnival company, rides, games, food, etc. With the pandemic, we won't be able to work this year. The fair and festival season has pretty much been canceled. Do you have suggestions as to how to keep my business afloat until next season? So in this case, you may be applying for the funds now, but it's really just to help you ride things out. And I wonder if that kind of funding is less available right now.
That is such a great question. So let me understand the business so I'm clear. Is it an amusement park?
It's a carnival company, so it sounds like it would be one of those things that perhaps travels around.
That travels. Right? Okay, right. And that would be really difficult, right? Because with the pandemic and COVID, here's what I would do. If I was coming in to consult with them, I would look at the carnival and I would step back, because the carnival is it's an opportunity to travel and experience. First, I would see, can we scale down and maybe target maybe a few areas and localize it, just like what Disney's doing now, right? If we could localize it and keep it at a small number, then what I would do is I would work with the carnival team. I don't know a lot about them, but this is my crazy brain, so hear me out. I would work with the carnival team and say, can we actually develop a unique mission in the next year that allows us to tap into funds? So let me give you an example. I have a son who's autistic. People who have children who are autistic, as parents, are constantly searching for new opportunities to get their kids into experiences. And they pay a lot of money for it because they will do whatever it takes. If the carnival created a mission where they're going to support the entry for autism and Asperger's, and as part of that solution, kids are going to have a chance to ride and experience, and parents are going to be there, the money can actually come from a social mission-driven organization that partners with you to get the funds, because there's millions of dollars that are set aside just for autism. Now, that may sound way off, but not in my world. Because in my world, part of the funding is to really tie into the mission we're supporting and then see how we can receive the funds. So it may require them to temporarily pivot and maybe bring in a new project that allows a different revenue stream to come through.
I should mention a couple of things. A lot of folks are writing in to wonder how to get in touch with you. And I know that was on one of the slides, which again, you can view in the slides or additional material section on the website. I don't know if you just want to say your email out loud, or what a good way to look you up is, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my first and last name. It's just www.kedmaough.com, KEDMAOUGH.com, or www.targetfunding.com. And if you forget anything, if you just key in Kedma in Google, if you find another Kedma, run. There should only be one me in the world, so you won't have a hard time finding me.
So one of the other things I should mention as we look through these questions, many of your questions are very specific to your own businesses, people who are writing in, which is great. I'm trying to pick those that I can kind of extrapolate from to have lessons that are good for multiple people. So here's an example of that. So one person writes in to say, I'm the CEO of 2 entities of a transportation company, a carrier and a brokerage. This person who writes in says, I am a disabled Hispanic woman veteran. Wow. However, I own a third, my husband owns a third, and another partner over the age of 70 who used to be the investor for the previous owner owns a third. So and we've gotten a couple of questions like this. What if your particular gender, other specifics is only one of the owners and it's co-owned with someone? Are you still eligible for the grant money for those types of folks?
What a great question. What a great question. What's so clear, and I want to make it super clear for everyone, is any program is going to be tied to variables. And so you have to think about what is the best variables to set your business moving forward. If I was working with them and I had a choice between veteran, disabled, and women. And it sounds so insensitive, and I want to just tell you I'm being really sensitive, but I'm thinking strategically. I would probably tell them to set themselves up first as veteran disabled, because veteran disabled is the most gives you often the highest opportunity for going after government contracts. And so, you know, I can't quote this for every agency, but I will tell you, having done this for 20 years, that generally speaking, it gives you a better opportunity. All those three is excellent, but you have to have one that's the highest, 51% or more. So you have to choose. Are you going to be 51% women disabled or 51% veteran disabled? From there, we can start targeting funds, whether it's government contracts, whether it's SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research, and Department of Transportation, which is a subset of that, whether it's actual organizations that want to support you because you are a veteran. You have to first identify which identity you want to work with.
Also getting a number of questions about people who are sole proprietorships, who own their business, but they're the employee. One of them is a nurse practitioner who's starting their own practice. They've been growing the business part-time. They want to be able to jump into it full-time, but they need the funding to help cover the salary for a couple months so they can then open up more availability, grow the business. We had a similar question from someone in the music industry who said, there's no business right now, but I need to cover my own salary. Can I pay myself a salary out of a grant, for example?
Very tough question. I'm going to tell you majority of the time, no. Majority of the time, no. However, hear me out. If you can use the funds to bring in projects, and part of that is you doing some of the work for the grant, then yes, it could be justified. I'm excited to hear about, I want to first talk about the music part, and then I'll move into the nurse. I'm excited to hear about the music because given what happened with COVID, I can tell you firmly that there is no one in our society that wants to see music and art go away. I mean, that would make the whole world not as beautiful as it is. And as a result of that, you're seeing a lot of funding that is being set aside for artists. And I see tons of them. So if you were, for example, I don't know where you live, and that's one of the problems, because as soon as I know where you live, I can start targeting. First, I would target locally. But if you were in Oregon, I would go after RAC, Regional Arts Commission. They've got tons of funding for musicians, for artists, grants set aside. And sole proprietorship, there's nothing wrong with that. There is still funding available, but you have to take your lens off banks and move your lens somewhere else. For the nurse, depending on where they are from an income perspective, because again, I don't have enough information, I would tell you nationally, every single person needs to check in with the individual development account. It's called the IDA. It's a hand up, not a handout. And it's actually called, it's a match savings grant. So for that nurse, I would say, let's get her, if they qualify, if she qualifies or he qualifies, let's get them enrolled. Typically in an IDA, you're looking at a 3, 4, 5 or more match. So 3-to-1 match would mean they invest, roughly $3,000. They get matched $9,000, and then they're giving $12,000. Salary is generally not going to be included. So I would say continue working your job, maybe even going part-time, and then still go after the funds until you can build it. It's often really hard to get the funds appropriated for your salary.
Gotcha. Let's see, what else do we have here? Some people are wondering if they have received PPP funding or an EIDL loan, for example, can they still apply for other types of grants or loans?
1,000%. The thing is that we have been so focused on COVID, again, this sharp lens, that we don't realize that COVID in my world is one bubble across 11 other options. So everything we're hearing is PPP and ED, that's one bubble. So absolutely. Here's how the game works though. You have to be pretty disciplined and not be frustrated. If you want to be in this game, you have to be long game. You can't come in and say, Kedma, I applied for a fund and it took me 30 days and they didn't give me any money. This is not the program for you. If you're willing to be in this long term, you're going to start seeing results. And my goal for every client is, I like to say, let's target $10,000 a year of money that you don't have to repay back or money that's interest-free. And that's how we set it. And then we start building from there.
Among those various criteria that you talked about with folks, veteran, female, et cetera, some folks are asking, are there any options for the LGBTQ community also?
Oh, absolutely. I have an entire chapter in my book for the LGBTQ community. So if you decide to get my book, there's an entire chapter. And in fact, one of the people we interviewed was the director for the National LGBTQ Community Chamber of Commerce. And by the way, the Chamber of Commerce does have a grant. In my book, I have specific appropriated funding for investors, angel investors, venture capitalists that just look at the LGBTQ community. So the answer is yes, yes, and yes. And I have been a champion for that community for 20 plus years. And it's, again, very targeted. Very targeted, and so the answer is yes. If you go on right now to the National Chamber of Commerce, you're going to see the grant that they offer every year. You have to compete for it, right? So we can't have crybabies right now saying, well, I have to do the work. You have to do the work, but the money is there.
Someone else is asking if there are also age-based grants if you're on the older side, for example. I would guess there are some on the younger side too.
Yes, and I like to say no matter what age I am, I'm always on the younger side, right? But the absolute answer is yes. I love AARP, believe it or not. AARP has done a lot of program impact. Believe it or not, Easter Seals. I am a huge fan for Easter Seals. I've consulted for Easter Seals, and they have a huge program set up for people who are at that next level and maybe can't find work, so they're going ahead and looking at entrepreneurship. So what's really cool is that the most exciting thing for me, if you've ever watched or seen Where in the World is Waldo, that's like me. Where in the world is Kedma? Because I'm constantly searching for this free money. So the answer is yes, the money is appropriated. If you want to follow the trail, first follow the nonprofit organizations that have a mission to support those organizations, and then you can follow the money that way.
You also talk a lot about doing the work. And in closing, I quickly want to ask this as well, because I think it's a good question. Doing the work is also sometimes knowing what you're not as good at, right? So someone asks, is it worth hiring a grant writer, someone who's really used to pitching this kind of stuff to help tweak what you're putting
great
out there?
Question. So I come from the grant writing world, and I would tell you if you were a nonprofit, absolutely. You don't need to as a for-profit. What you do need to do is you need to have the basic things behind you. So if we worked together, I would say, let's get our basic documents. Like, what is your mission? You know how many times I ask people and they're like, I have no idea. Yeah, well, let's work on that first, because you can't go after funds if you don't know that. I would have your books, right? What your profit and loss looks like. And then I would have you thinking about 3 or more cool projects. Because a lot of times when you look at the people who won, and I haven't gone in and looked at Verizon small business grants, I haven't seen who you chose. But if I was to be your consultant and look in, I would bet that a fair bit of those had a big piece of it was the story. A big piece was, why were they using the money? What was the situation? And how were they going to use it? And that really all comes down to the story, not the mechanics. And if you're competing with 10,000 people and they all have amazing stories, how do yours become the best? How does yours become the best? So because you're right now on the clouds and you got to go elevate up. So I would say you don't need to hire a grant writer. I don't want you spending thousands of dollars, because that's not how I think. I want you to focus on targeting, and those are things we can help you with. But I don't think it's necessary. If it was, I would tell you to. I think what's more important is to identify the funds and then have an assistant, like a virtual assistant or someone managing the calendar.
Right, that makes sense. All right, Kedma, thank you so much. She is a business funding expert and the author of Target Funding. You can find her, as she mentioned, at kedmaough.com, KEDMAOUGH.com, if you want more information or to get in touch with her. Thank you all for watching. Again, you can rewatch this presentation as well as view all the slides right here at brighttalk.com or at the Verizon Business website. Thank you again, Kedma.
Thank you.
And that's it for today. Thank you so much to Julie and Kedma for their insight into small business funding. In the attachments tab, you'll see that we are sharing today's presentation slides as well as a handout and a link. You can check out the other webinars as well on our Bright Talk channel page. You can register now for our next webinar. That's June 2nd. Shelley Palmer will be with us from the Palmer Group. She's going to talk about new technologies that we've all gotten used to lately and which ones you might want to keep from those lists of technological tools. So I hope you'll join us then, and for all the events in our small business webinar series, have a good one. We'll see you then.